Okay, so looking at the cadence 8-7-8, let's just quickly pencil these chords underneath. So 1C5-1. There are alternatives you can use for an 8-7-8 soprano line. You might remember we can do 4-5-1 or even 1B5-1. And in many ways, 1B5-1 is less problematic than 1C. You've got fewer things to remember that could go wrong. But we're going to look at 1C5-1 for now. As long as you keep to these simple points, it's really easy to do. So again, I'm going to do the bass line first. And again, so here we go, just sketching these notes: G, B, D, D, F sharp and A, and G, B, D. Okay, and I'm going to work from 1C onwards. So we want the fifth in the bass first of all, so D, and there's the G in the soprano, cross that off. Moving on, again, when we go from 1C to 5, the bass note stays the same, although we might decorate it with a little lower auxiliary, like so. We can still do that even with the 8-7-8. Cross off that D, and we've used the F sharp in the soprano. And as you can see here, when the leading note is in the soprano, Bach won't be cheating. You can see the leading note rises to the tonic there. But yes, only when it's in the alto or tenor that we can cheat with the leading note at the cadence. Cool, and then onto the last chord, we've used 1G, and we're going to put another one in the bass. I'll just cross that one off. Cool, so we've done the bass line. Probably next thing to fill in really is the 4 in our 6/4 chord. So if you remember that 1C is a second inversion chord, another name for that is a 6/4 chord because of the intervals we get above the bass. And if we look here, actually the G in the soprano is actually the 4 in our 6/4 chord. Okay, so that's dissonant. Fortunately, it's already been prepared on the soprano's previous note. So if we have a look back here, this is the preparation for that. So that's cool. And then the 6 is the B, and that can go, well, let's have a look. Let's think which one would be the best. We need to double the bass note, so we're going to have to give one of the parts a D. So the problem is, if I gave the tenor a D, the alto would then be overlapping if it went down to the B. So therefore, I'm going to have to give the D to the alto this time. So that previously, you remember that we doubled the bass note in 1C, and that doubled bass note went into the tenor. This time we're doubling the bass note and it's going in the alto, so that's one interesting difference. And then the remaining note of the chord, the B, is going to go here, and I'll cross that off. Now, just as the dissonant 4 and the dissonant 6, basically the notes other than the bass note are dissonant, and they will resolve down by step. So there's the 4 resolving down by step. So here's our 6, and again that's going to resolve down by step as we move into that next chord, as we go into the D chord. So there's my A in the tenor. Again, in chord 5, we're usually doubling the root of the chord, so this time that doubled root goes into the alto. Otherwise, it's going to be quite similar to before, but there is one difference. So if we look at the final chord, a G, B, D, we need to have a B and a D. Now, for a good texture, we're probably going to want to put the D in the alto and the B there. That would give me a nice top-heavy texture. I'm going to switch to pencil here. The danger, you might have been tempted, like you did here before, to add a C to the chord, to add the 7th to chord 5 as a passing note. And if I had done that, if we just look at the alto for a minute, if I was to add the seventh is dissonant, has to resolve down by step. The next note in the alto would have had to have been B, and that would have forced my tenor to go low to get to a D, because I couldn't go to the D above middle C, because that would be overlapping the B in the alto. So if I then went down to the D, not only is that going a bit low for the tenor, it's a bit of a leap, it's not very smooth, and you can actually, if I draw these lines here, you'll start to see that we end up with parallel fifths. So there's all sorts of reasons why we don't want to add that seventh there. So although passing notes get a star marks, they won't get you any star marks if they create parallel fifths, and they give you a dodgy texture, so that's not going to be a good thing. So we'll rub out that pencil. So what you'll see then is that the final cadence just seems to be a bit simpler when the soprano pattern is 8-7-8. In order, if it is 8-7-8, it has to be 8-8-7-8 if you want to use 1C, because otherwise the dissonant fourth in 1C will not be prepared and you will lose marks. Okay, so 8-7-8 can only be 1C5-1 if it's 8-8-7-8. Alternatives though, if you're unable to prepare the 1C, then you could alternatively use 4-5-1, or you could use 1B 5-1. Again, but you would not be using 5-7 for the same reasons that we've just said above. Okay. Great, so that's how to do the 8-7-8 cadence, making sure that we prepare before. Again, just like in the first example, chord 4B or 4A would be really nice preparation, and it would sound like this. Okay, or 4A. So you just have to take a little bit of extra care to make sure that you don't get parallel fifths when you do a 1C5-1 cadence on 8-7-8, and you have to make sure that you are able to prepare that dissonant fourth in 1C.